When it comes to retirement planning, what I see is that most people planning for retirement, they're kind of following advice from gurus they see on YouTube, TV, or podcasts. And on the surface, a lot of it sounds reasonable, right? But here's the scary truth. Some of that advice could actually wreck your retirement if you take it at face value. My name is Keith Wilson. I'm a financial advisor. And in this video, I'm breaking down two of the worst retirement lies floating around online. The kind of rules that sound smart, but can drain your savings faster than you ever imagined. Look, I work with retirees all across the country, and I've seen too many people get burned by advice that oversimplifies one of the most complex financial decisions of their lives. So, today I'm exposing two of the most misleading retirement ideas out there from two very well-known financial figures. Now, I may step on some toes here, but let's get to it. Now, before anyone gets defensive, let me say this up front. Some of these well-known financial figures have helped millions of people get out of debt, build emergency funds, and feel more confident about their money. And they've done a lot of good work. But personal finance and retirement planning are not the same. Helping someone pay off credit cards is one skill. Designing a plan to turn 30 years of savings into income that has to last the rest of your life, that's something entirely different. And that's where their advice starts to fall apart. Let's start with what is being floated out there about how much you can withdraw from your portfolio, so-called safely, and that is the 8% withdrawal rule. Now, I'm not going to name names here, but this certain individual has said that if you invest 100% of your money in the S&P 500, you can expect a 12% annual return. And he claims you can safely withdraw 8% a year from your retirement portfolio without running out of money. Hey, that sounds great. Way better than the 4% rule most advisors talk about. But there's a big problem. It's completely unrealistic. Now, if you haven't heard about the 4% rule, let's go back to the source. In 1994, a financial planner named William Bengen studied 50 years of market history. And he found out that retirees who withdrew 4% of their initial portfolio and adjusted for inflation each year, that could make their money last about 30 years. That's the 4% rule. And even that assumes a diversified portfolio, not 100% stocks. It doesn't account for panic selling, overspending, or the changes in lifestyle that naturally happen all throughout retirement. Now, I will say this, recently Bengen has revised the withdrawal rate to close to 5%. So with that being said, let me state the obvious about the claim regarding a withdrawal rate of 8% is perfectly safe since the S&P 500 returns are 12%. All right, first of all, the S&P 500 does not have a return of 12% every year. It's not linear. In fact, according to YCharts, in the last 30 years, the S&P only had 2 years that were close to the 12% return. In 2004, it was 10.8%, and in 2016, it was 11.96%. Now, the rest of the years, they were all over the place. Even small differences in long-term returns completely change what's safe to withdraw. If you spend based on inflated numbers, you will overspend. And once you overspend early, you possibly cannot recover. But here's what gets ignored. Retirement spending is not consistent. Like in your early years, the go-go years, what happens? You're going to travel, you're going to renovate, explore, and enjoy life. Then you enter the slow-go years where spending levels out. And eventually the no-go years where lifestyle spending drops by 25 to 30%. A fixed withdrawal rate doesn't match real life. So if 4% has flaws, the 8% rule is downright reckless. It assumes you can double your withdrawals and still be safe. And that brings us to the biggest danger in retirement planning: sequence of returns risk. So you remember the 2008 crash, I'm sure. The S&P 500 dropped 53% in about 18 months. Now imagine retiring right before that happens. You're pulling 8% from a portfolio that's getting chopped in half. That's how people can run out of money 10 or 15 years too soon. The timing of your returns matters more than the average return itself. And since you don't know what it's going to be like in the first few years of retirement, that is why I would consider to have 3 to 5 years worth of income you will need in cash and draw from that first, so you don't have to sell off securities that may be down, giving them time to, hopefully recover. Now, the 8% rule that this individual states may only work if your retirement starts right before a long bull market. And unless you have come back from the future to tell us what to expect, we can't count on that. So let's put this claim to a test using a financial planning tool called FI Calc. So I'm going to go to this tool now. Looking at this, let's say the portfolio really doesn't matter, is $1 million. Let's get that right. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And remember, this individual said, hey, invest 100% in stocks, specifically the S&P 500. And when I do that on this calculator, we see stocks are represented by large cap U.S. index funds, S&P 500. Okay, great. We got 100% in stock, S&P 500, $1 million portfolio. This individual said, pull 8%. Well, 8% of $1 million is $80,000. So let's see what happened. So when we plug those numbers in, look at the success rate. About 41%. So I don't know about you, but a success rate of 41% doesn't sound too safe to me. Look at the other thing that this calculation, keep in mind, this scenario or calculator is running retirement simulations, about 125 different scenarios that could happen. Look at large spending. Remember I said spending in retirement is not consistent. There are going to be some years something comes up, big trips or big expenditures. If we had large spending in any given year, and they define large spending at least 50% of your normal withdrawal, then it's a 0% chance of success. So with that, looking at that's just this 8% withdrawal rule. To me, that's not a plan. That's gambling and downright reckless. Now let's go to the opposite extreme. Another well-known financial guru out there says you need $5 to $10 million to feel secure in retirement. In other words, that's the benchmark for everyone. $5 million. Well, here's the problem. Statements like that make everyday families feel hopeless. Like no matter how much they save, it's never enough. And that fear keeps people working longer than they need to. And it's simply not true. Because according to an article citing the Employee Benefit Research Institute, only about 0.1% of retirement savers in the U.S. have a nest egg of 5 million or more. So this notion you have to have $5 million in order to retire is unattainable for a lot of folks. Now, how much you need to retire depends on a lot of things, like what sources of income will already be in place, like Social Security or a pension. Where are your investments located, like tax-deferred accounts, tax-free, and taxable accounts? How are the investments allocated? Do you have that 3 to 5 years of income in cash that you will need to live on in the first few years in retirement. So let me show you with some real world examples. Let's look at a couple, both 58. Here's their financial picture. $100,000 in savings, $375,000 in a brokerage account, $1 million in an IRA, plus a smaller Roth balance. So about $1.8 million total. Their spending goal is $100,000 a year. So let's take a look at, I'm going to go in my financial planning software and we're going to take a look at how that pans out. So here we are with this couple, as I said, $1.8 million invested across the bank account. We got a brokerage account, IRA, and a Roth IRA. And they want to spend $100,000 a year, $8,300 a month. Let's look at their degree of success. Not so good, 53%. How are we going to make this work? Remember, everybody's going to be different. But what if they said, hey, we're going to collect, they're 58, we're going to collect Social Security at 62. Wonder if we change that strategy to full retirement age, which is 67. How does that help this situation? Hey, that's not too bad. Now it jumped from 53% to 69%. If you've seen my other videos looking at this financial planning software, I have said that I like the sweet spot around 85%. You really don't want it 100% because you're kind of leaving money on the table at that point. But 85% is what I'm comfortable with. So let's look at a couple of other things here. They don't have quite enough in that cash position where I said I'd like for you to have 3 to 5 years in cash and pull from that first in the first few years of retirement instead of relying on your portfolio. And then their portfolio might be out of whack. If we just change those two things, let's look at just a balanced or moderate allocation for them on their assets. Now what happens? Wow, we popped up to 92%. They didn't have $5 million. They had quite a bit, $1.8 million. But this kind of goes to show you that you don't need $5 million. It's really dependent upon your individual situation. Okay, let's look at another hypothetical couple, Mark and Jenny, we'll call them, age 64 and 63. They've saved around $600,000, own their home outright, and spend about $70,000 a year. So let's take a look at that. So here we are in the financial planning software. Again, they've got $600,000 saved, some of it spread with the bank accounts, and then we've got some IRAs, Roth IRA, and brokerage accounts. So they're kind of spread out. And remember, they want to spend, they want to retire 64, 63. They want to spend $6,000 a month. All right, let's take a look at their analysis. Ooh, doesn't look too good, 35%, but kind of the same situation as the other couple. They wanted to take Social Security right away. Let's change that and stave it off at least till full retirement age. If we refresh that, bumped up to 71%. That one subtle change, waiting a few years to collect Social Security to get the larger check, made a big difference. Again, we're going to do the same thing with the other. Make sure their asset allocation is right, that matches their goals and objectives. Everybody's going to be different. And maybe bump up the cash position. If we would have done that, boom, 86%. You see, you don't need $5 million to retire. You need a plan. Because here's the truth. The 8% withdrawal rule can destroy your portfolio. The $5 million rule can destroy your confidence. And both push people in the wrong direction. So what you really need is a balanced, personalized plan that matches your lifestyle, your spending, your goals, and your risk tolerance. You see, retirement isn't about following catchy rules or podcast sound bites. It's about freedom. It's about living the life you worked so hard to build. So before you take advice from, anyone shouting into a camera, I guess like me, make sure it actually fits your life. And if you want a plan built around your real numbers and your real goals, hit subscribe, click the link below, and that way we can get in touch with each other with a personalized consultation. Hey, thanks for watching, and just know that there is not a one-size-fits-all when it comes to retirement planning. See you next time. If you like what you're seeing so far, check out this next video. Subscribe to the channel. Lord willing, we'll see you next time.